You are tuned in to a CS Podcast exclusive presented by NFLDraftBible.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the CS Podcast presented by the NUC NFL Draft Bible. Can't stop, won't stop. You already know how it is. Check us out, NFLDraftBible.com. Use the promo code DRAFT2016 for a 30-day free trial, and for a limited time only, you can get 50% off for life by signing up and using the promo code Football2016. So again, Football2016 is the promo code if you want 50% off for life. A great deal there. And again, Draft 2016 if you guys want to check us out and get that 30-day free trial, see how things are with the Draft Bible. Go ahead, log on, sign up, NFLDraftBible.com. Follow on Twitter at NFL Draft Bible. As always, I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, and the time has come. It is finally here, folks. Kickoff to the FCS football season is just hours away. It's the best time of the year. College football season is upon us. We got NFL preseason going on as well. Tonight we have Charleston Southern. They're playing the five-time defending national champion North Dakota State Bison at the Fargo Dome. It's going to be tough for Charleston Southern, and of course North Dakota State is the favorite to win that game. But as we've seen a year ago against Montana, they were on the road at Montana, but North Dakota State dropped that one to start the season. So anything can happen in the FCS. Anything can happen in college football. Should be a great game. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Chris Shanafelt, and what we're doing is I'll be previewing all of the FCS football programs here in the state of Illinois. Earlier in the week, we had Zach Carpenter on to talk Illinois State Redbirds. On Thursday, we had Justin Rust on to talk Eastern Illinois Panthers. And today we'll be focusing on the Western Illinois Leathernecks as we welcome onto the show Scott Holland, who covers the Leathernecks as well as high school sports for the McDonough County Voice. And Scott, we really do appreciate you jumping on this afternoon. Last season, Western Illinois finished 7-6. They defeated Dayton in the opening round of the FCS playoffs before getting bounced by Illinois State. Coach Bob Nielsen moves on to South Dakota, and Charlie Fisher was brought into the to be the team's new head coach. Fisher, of course, ran quite an impressive offense over at Richmond. Have you been around Fisher much at all yet? What kind of vibe is he giving off so far early on?
I've been with Coach Fisher quite a bit since he came in last winter, and it's a 180 degree difference between him and Bob Nielsen. Nielsen was kind of very stoic, very quiet. He let kind of his assistants do a lot of the teaching and firing up the guys, where Fisher's very hands-on. He's in practice. He's in the community. It's a completely different head coaching experience. He's a guy who's definitely out there. He's reached out to the alumni base quite a bit. I know that sounds strange, but Western never had a football alumni association or any kind of group get together, and he's organized that. He's brought a lot of guys back to campus, brought a lot of guys back to talk to the players, and he's really kind of rallied the program after really a disappointment of Coach Nielsen leaving, which really caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, obviously, I think it's safe to say that they exceeded expectations last season, which kind of explains why Nielsen is no longer there. He took a job at South Dakota. In comes Charlie Fisher. How different are the expectations for the Leathernecks now compared to what they were a year ago? Again, I think they really did exceed expectations last season, and now this year, Western Illinois, they open up the season as the 24th. They're ranked the 24th best team in the FCS coaches poll. So again, how different are the expectations for them now compared to a year ago? And what do you think about that ranking, 24th best in the nation in all the FCS according to the FCS coaches? Does that sound about right for this team?
I think it does. I'd be surprised if they would maybe be a little bit higher, because I do think that this is a playoff team. I think it's a very talented team, and I think that's the biggest difference as far as expectations go. There are expectations now. A year ago, people were thinking, okay, maybe we get to 500, maybe Western gets to 500, and that's a pretty good season. That's an acceptable season. 4-4 in a really good Missouri Valley. That's really good. That's doing better than anyone would have imagined. Now it's completely different. People will be disappointed if this isn't a playoff team. With what this squad has coming back, with the new coaching staff and the excitement they've brought, the expectations are really high that this is a playoff team, and then maybe it's not a North Dakota State yet because no one's a North Dakota State, but this is a team that should be fighting for a top third part of the Missouri Valley Football Conference.
And you know what? Maybe, like you said, I mean, Coach Nielsen leaving caught them all by surprise, caught me by surprise. But maybe in the end, bring in Coach Fisher. Maybe this will be the best thing for the Western Illinois Leathernecks. Now, Western Illinois will be entering the season, of course, with a new starting quarterback and starting running back as Trenton Norvell and Nico Watson both graduated. Coach Fisher has already been on record in saying that Sean McGuire has set himself apart from the other quarterbacks on the team, and we got a pretty good sample size of McGuire last year. But when it comes to the running back position, I'm not really sure what to expect, Scott. I mean, there's really a big hole at that position, at least from what I see, and it's tough to ask anybody to replace the type of production that Watson gave them last year. Will there be a bell cow running back for them this season, or will it be more of a running back by committee deal? And as for the quarterback, Sean McGuire, are you confident that he can be a reliable and efficient quarterback for them in this offense this season?
As for the running back spot, I think that it's going to be a running back by committee. I mean, Nico Watson was 6 foot, 250 pounds. He was a big bowling ball of a man back there, and that's something you don't replace. I mean, that's a guy you can give the ball to 30 times, and he's going to move. He's going to be able to take the ball 30 times. They're not as big back there. They're going to try and be a little bit more physical in the run game, but they don't have his size or power right now. Steve McShane, Devin Moore, and Jamie Gilmore are the three guys who will probably split the carries. Gilmore is a transfer from Temple. He's a senior transfer. Moore is a senior. He had a couple starts at the beginning of last season and was the number 2. Steve McShane was a true freshman. Really kind of showed some spurts, some bursts. He's a small guy, but he's got really good speed. You maybe want to see him, get him in space, and maybe get him to that next level where no one's going to catch him if he can get behind a couple guys. But and McShane played baseball, so he was doing that during spring camp. So I'm not sure how far behind he is on learning the scheme and system, since he was a baseball player as well, and he did that during the spring when Coach Fisher and his staff came in and was implementing the new offense. As far as the quarterback position, actually Trenton Norvell is back. He is a senior. Sean McGuire just overtook him during the offseason. I think he just grasped the offense really well, played really well in the spring game when it was kind of an even competition. But McGuire's a guy, he's got that big arm. He's a little bit more mobile than Norvell is, and that's kind of the way the conference is going. If you look at the quarterback situation, it's not just a guy who can just drop back and throw it 40, 50 yards. You want a quarterback that can move the ball, that can maybe pick up a first down for you with some legs or avoid the pressure, and McGuire is definitely a little bit more mobile than Norvell is, and I think he's not afraid to maybe take a few more shots where Norvell, I think, was a little bit more cautious. He kind of would lock in on his number 1, number 2 targets maybe a little too much, and McGuire's a guy that proved last year he's not afraid to look to that 3rd or 4th option or take off if the opportunity presents itself, and I think that's really what appealed and made him the guy that they decided to give the ball to for the first game.
All right. Wow. So, okay, I got to step up my research, Scott. For whatever reason, I thought Norvell was a senior, so McGuire just came in and won the job. That's very interesting. And again, we've seen some of McGuire last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does now as the team's starting quarterback. And now let's talk about some of the weapons that McGuire will have the luxury in targeting this season. There's a lot of depth at that wide receiver position when talking about the Western Illinois Leathernecks. Of course, Lance Lenore and Joey Borsellino have been quite a dynamic duo since they arrived in Macomb, and Stacy Smith broke out onto the scene as a freshman last season. Give us your thoughts on this wide receiving core and with what looks to be maybe a step back in the running game, no more Nico Watson. Should we expect even bigger numbers out of these wide receivers this season, or maybe if they have a lack of running game, will this make their jobs even tougher?
I think that the Western is so. You mentioned it. I mean, not just the Missouri Valley, but in FCS, if there's a group that's deeper and more talented than Western Illinois, I don't know who it is. I'm just looking at Western's 2 deep. I mean, they can go 7 deep. They've got at least 7 receivers that I think could be starting for just about any team in the country. You mentioned Stacy Smith as that number 3. He's a guy that may be primarily used on special teams, even though he had a great year last year. I mean, he's a weapon back there. Lenore has set every record in program history. Borsellino is in the top 5 of just about every record in program history. And those are the 2 main guns. Those are 2 big weapons. But with teams focus on them, you've got Javon Williams, who is a converted quarterback. He's 6'5". He's going to be a guy that's probably going to get a lot of red zone targets because he is a big body. Jalen Ackland's a guy that's really progressed nicely. Adam Hoogerworth got hurt at the end of the season last year, but he's a guy that's shown that he's not afraid to run that slot, go over the middle. I mean, he probably led the team in spectacular catches, but he also probably led the team in getting drilled after making those spectacular catches. And then Isaiah LeShore, he's been the star of the spring game the last 2 years, and he's a guy you have to keep an eye on as well. And you mentioned Stacey Smith and Western, and sticking with the passing game, Western didn't throw to the tight end the last 3 years. It was more of an H-back spot that was a lead blocker. Now Western's going to throw the ball to the tight end a little bit more often, and that might be a spot where you see them. Hey, if they're having trouble running the ball, you might see them throw those short passes to those tight ends. Now that's going to be a much more feature part of the offense.
All right, and yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, there isn't many other wide receiver corps in the FCS that are as stacked as Western Illinois and how they've been over the years. And since he's arrived at Western Illinois, Lance Lenore, he's been just about as consistent as you can be at the receiver position. Like he said, his name is all over the record books over there at Western Illinois. He's been the team's leading wide receiver and has reeled in 7 touchdowns each year since he's been there. He's coming off of a career year in which he caught 83 balls for nearly 1,200 yards. I know that we still have an entire season to play, Scott, but I think there's an NFL talent at that wide receiver position for the Leathernecks. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's a guy that could really step in, if not in the receiving game, a guy that can return kicks. He did that for Western as well, return punts, he returned kicks. I know he did a lot of those receiving camps where there's upper echelon FBS receivers go to. I know he was at those, he participated in those. So I think the word is out there that this is a guy that you might see, could be in an NFL camp next year because he does have that kind of talent. He has that speed. He has those hands. And a lot of people don't talk about this with Lance Lenore. They see the numbers. But this guy is a great blocker. I mean, he's a tremendous blocker. He's not afraid to go out there and help his running backs, help his fellow receivers downfield. He runs great routes. He does a lot of the little things very well that people don't notice. Stuff that jumps out besides the big catches, the touchdown catches, and the yardage. He does a lot of things well for Western, and I think he is a talented guy that could find himself in an NFL camp in the future.
Again, we're talking Western Illinois Leathernecks football with Scott Holland here from the McDonough County Voice on the CS podcast presented by the NUC NFL Draft Bible. I am your host, Chris Shanafel, and Scott, take a look at the defense. It seems like wherever the ball is, you're able to find linebacker Brett Taylor last season. He led the Leathernecks with 144 total tackles. He had a couple of picks, he had a couple of forced fumbles, and he had a couple of touchdowns as well. Let's not forget about the 10.5 tackles for loss. Taylor was named preseason All-American. Is it even fathomable that he could possibly have a better and more productive year in 2016?
Boy, I don't know how he could have a much better year than he had a year ago. You're right. He was all over the place. He was a ball hawk. And that was his first year. That was his first year as a full-time starter at that middle linebacker spot. So it's a new defense. So he's got to grasp that. He's also the defensive captain. He's the middle linebacker. So he's calling out the plays. He's got a lot of responsibilities as far as anchoring that defense, making the plays, making the play calls. But he's a guy that seems like he's really grasped it well. I think this defense will be a little bit more aggressive than it has been the last couple of years. So I see no reason why he can't be a guy that's going to not just have those tackles, but I think those tackle for loss numbers and those sacks, I think are going to be the numbers to watch with him. And I think those are the ones that are going to really kind of increase this year.
And I also thought that defensive lineman Pete Swenson showed a lot as a redshirt freshman last season. He led the way with 5 sacks, very disruptive there on that defensive line. And when I was doing some research on this team, Scott, I noticed that a lot of the players on this defense are underclassmen, which bodes well for the future and, of course, this coming season as well. This defense allowed about 30 points per game last year, which puts a lot of pressure on the offense. Now with the new starting quarterback, Inshawn McGuire, with the experience that this young defense has now gotten under its belt, can you see that things start to turn around for them this season and begin to become a strength team by any chance?
I do. You mentioned it's very young. It's a very young defense that they don't have a single senior starter. I don't believe. I'm not sure if they have maybe 1 or 2 in their 2 deep. But you mentioned it's young. It's experienced. They've got 7 guys who started at least 3 games last year on the defensive side coming back. The defensive line is going to be a spot to watch, though. They did lose 3 seniors graduated, so that's a spot where they're going to need some guys to fill in. They've got, but you mentioned that all 4 four starters who are guys who are projected to start, I should say, they did play a lot last year. Their backups played a lot. It's just going to be a question of the depth situation, I think. They've got guys who are back who have played a lot of football as starters, but it's going to be how deep they are, if they can sustain a few injuries, and that's really going to be the key for this defense. You mentioned the number of points this team gave up. They gave up a lot of points. They gave up a lot of yards, but they also forced a lot of turnovers. They were near the top of the valley in interceptions and plus-minus rating and turnovers forced, and it was kind of a bend-but-don't-break defense. So as ugly as those points per game were last year, it could have been a lot uglier, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to that secondary because it is a very experienced, very deep secondary that had a lot of interceptions. So I think it's going to, it might start, defenses, you say you build from the back to the front. For Western, it might be built from the back, or from the front to the back, I should say. For Western, it might be built from the back to the front.
And as you said, I mean, a lot of experience, but a young defense that Coach David Elson, the new defense coordinator, has to work with. Certainly going to be looking forward to see how he starts to turn things around for the defense over there at Western Illinois. And just a couple more questions for you, and then we'll let you go, Scott. Really do appreciate your time this afternoon. What will be the key for Western Illinois to have success this season? Is there a specific position group or a specific player that'll have to step it up and play big this season in order for them to have the success that they hope to have and make a run in the FCS playoffs?
Well, I think I know I mentioned how important the secondary is to that defense, but in the Missouri Valley, you got to win up front. Offensive and defensive lines, they've got to be good this year. I mean, that's you can't give up a bunch of yards on the ground defensively. Offensively, I know Western's going to be probably strength is going to be in the pass, but you have to be able to run the ball every once in a while, run the ball when you need to be, and you got to keep your quarterback's jersey clean. So a lot of pressure is going to fall on those linemen on both sides of the ball because there were times last year where Western, they gave up a lot. Their third down efficiency on defense wasn't very good, and it wasn't because of the secondary linebackers. It was because they couldn't get to the quarterback when they needed to. They couldn't stop the run when they needed to. They couldn't get off the field when they needed to. And offensively, they didn't. Nico Watson covered up a lot of holes on offense. When you're 250 pounds and you get that full head of steam going, you're going to be good for 2 or 3 yards a carry. But with the new running backs in and a quarterback, as you mentioned, who only has 3 or 4 college starts, it's going to be on that veteran offensive line to really open up some holes and to give Sean McGuire a lot of time to throw the ball.
Yeah, both sides of the ball, offense and defensive line, they'll have to step it up this season. Now, of course, the first 3 games of the Leathernecks season are their only non-conference opponents of the season, and it's a tough stretch as they open up the season this Thursday on the road against Eastern Illinois, and then they host arguably the top quarterback in the FCS in Case Cookus in Northern Arizona, and then they're back on the road to take on Northern Illinois. And then from there, they take on their Missouri Valley opponents, including South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Illinois State, and a handful of other solid conference opponents. The MVFC is the toughest conference in all the FCS, in my opinion. It certainly seems like you feel that way as well, and I know we're certainly not alone in that, Scott. Final question before I let you go. If you had to predict a final record for the 2016 Western Illinois Leathernecks football team, they play a total of 11 regular seasons. What is your record prediction? What are you expecting out of this team this season? And is this a playoff team come late November?
Well, that's kind of the hot question. I think there's an argument to be made that this team could be 8-3. You listen to some people who aren't as familiar with Western and are looking around the Missouri Valley, and they say there's an argument to be made that this team is 3-8. I think Western will fall. I don't think they'll get to 8 wins this year. I think 7-4. I feel is a pretty good. I think is 7-4. I think I see them going 2-1 in the non-conference, and I think 5-3 in the Valley gets them to 7-4, and that's 1 win better than a year ago, and I think then that gets them to the playoffs, and I think they will be a playoff team. I think if they get a good bracket, they get the FCS has talked about going away from regionalization, so if you can avoid the Northern Iowas, the Illinois States, the powerhouse of the Missouri Valley in the postseason, there's no reason they can't make a decent run in the postseason as well. So I'm kind of going with the people around this area who think that it would be a disappointment if this isn't a 7-win team at least and isn't a playoff team.
All right. Well, I'm with you. I think this team, at least on paper, certainly looks like a playoff team. Really interested in seeing how Coach Fisher does over there now, being the man in charge over there of the Leathernecks football team. I'm certainly expecting a playoff appearance for this team as well for the second straight year. They just snuck in last year. I think this is going to be a really good season for the Leathernecks and their fans. in what is a very tough conference and a very tough schedule as it is for everybody else in their conference. Scott, really do appreciate you hopping on the show this afternoon. Before we let you go, please let our listeners know where they could check out your work at.
You can just go to McDonoughVoice.com. We'll have we've run all of our positional previews, so they should still be up on our website. If you want to look at a kind of a position by position battle of a breakdown, we'll have some preview stuff coming up this week and a look at the final depth chart heading into the Eastern Illinois game. So we'll have that stuff up there probably every Monday, every Saturday, every as much Western stuff as we can have throughout the season.
Hey, sounds great. Can't get enough, Scott. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work, and hopefully we can do this again down the line. All the best.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me on today.
There he goes, Scott Holland, again, of the McDonough County Voice, covering Western Illinois and high school sports. Absolutely a fantastic interview there. Really enjoyed chatting with Scott. Certainly knows his stuff and certainly knows this Western Illinois team. It sounds like the excitement is back. It sounds like Coach Fisher is really excited to be the head coach of the Western Illinois Leathernecks, and there's a lot of talent on this team. We talked about the wide receiver core, which may be the most talented position and the position that has the most depth on this Leathernecks team. We talked about Sean McGuire, who Trenton Norvell did not graduate. McGuire actually beat out Norvell for the starting spot. We've seen some of McGuire last season, and we're expected to see even more of him this season. And obviously the big question will be who will step up at running back, and will this defense help the offense out at all? Going to be a lot of fun to watch. Again, Western Illinois opens the season up this Thursday against Eastern Illinois. Should be a great game. And again, tomorrow we'll wrap up the whole FCS preview in the state of Illinois as we talk Southern Illinois, so be on the lookout for that. Special thanks to Scott Holland for calling in the show this afternoon. And until next time, folks, thanks for tuning in.